My mother demanded I cancel my wedding because my stepsister was divorced, but when she sent flirty messages to my fiancé, I uninvited them both and hired security. They never expected what happened on the ceremony day. I'm 30 years old. I work in digital marketing. And honestly, I need to tell this story because I still can't believe everything that happened in the last few months. My wedding was 3 weeks ago, and, truth be told, I thought it was going to be the happiest day of my life. And it was. But the road to get there was an absolute nightmare thanks to my mom and my half-sister Crystal. And when I say nightmare, I'm not exaggerating even a little bit. I guess I should start from the beginning so everything makes sense. Gabriel, my now husband, proposed to me in March last year. We'd been dating for like 6 years, we'd been living together for 3, and it was the perfect moment. He's 31 years old, works in finance, and he's basically the calmest and most patient person I've ever met in my life, which, looking back, was a huge blessing considering all the drama that was coming. The proposal was beautiful, nothing ostentatious, just the two of us on a hike we do often. And when he said the words, I felt like my heart was going to explode with happiness. I called my mom that same day, like an hour later, because obviously I wanted to share the news with her. And her reaction was weird. She didn't say congratulations right away. The first thing that came out of her mouth was, and how do you think Crystal is going to feel about this? And I was like, excuse me? Did you just ask me how my sister is going to feel about my engagement? But anyway, I tried to ignore it. I thought she was just being overprotective of Crystal, like always. Crystal is my half-sister. She's 24 years old, 6 years younger than me. We share a mom but not a dad. Her dad is Patrick, my stepdad, who honestly has always been more decent to me than my own mother when it comes to these things. Crystal and I were never super close. She was always like the spoiled child of the family. The baby. And since we were girls, everything revolved around her. If I got good grades, it was because I studied hard. But if Crystal got good grades, it was because she was a genius. If I got a job, it was fine. But if Crystal got a part-time job at a coffee shop, it was cause for family celebration. You know what I mean? There was always that difference in how they treated us. And honestly, I learned to live with that years ago. It just was what it was. So Gabriel and I started planning the wedding. We decided we wanted something in January, like 10 months after the engagement, nothing too big but not super intimate either, like 120 people, at a nice venue but not extravagant. I was super excited, putting together my guest list, looking at dresses with my friend Lindsay, who was going to be my maid of honor, and all that stuff. Things were going really well until, wait for this, Crystal suddenly announces in June that she's getting married. To who? To a guy named Logan she'd literally met 3 months before. 2 months. I didn't even know she had a boyfriend until she showed up with a ring saying they were getting married in 2 weeks because they didn't want to wait. My mom was delighted. Of course. Saying it was so romantic and that when you know, and all that garbage. Patrick, her dad, was more skeptical, but didn't say anything because he never wants to cause problems. Crystal's wedding was basically a quickie ceremony at the courthouse, followed by lunch with the immediate family. Logan seemed like a normal guy. He worked in construction or something like that. He was polite, but there was something about him that didn't convince me. I don't know. Like he was too charming in a fake way, you know what I mean? But anyway, it wasn't my place to say anything. So I just congratulated my sister and moved on with my life and planning my own wedding. Crystal posted photos on social media every day with hashtags like number newlyweds, number best thusbandiver, number sublest. And I just thought, okay, if you're happy then great. Fast forward to July. Just 2 months after, Crystal got married. My cousin Stephanie, who has always been like my confidant in the family, calls me one night crying, saying that Crystal is devastated because Logan cheated on her. And he didn't just cheat on her with just anyone. He cheated on her with Crystal's best friend, a girl named I don't know what, who she'd known since high school. Apparently they got caught together in the apartment. Crystal and Logan shared in bed, super obvious situation. Crystal came home early from work or something and found them. It was an absolute disaster. My mom called me that same night hysterical, saying I had to come to the house immediately to support my sister. And of course I went because, even though Crystal and I weren't close, I didn't want her to be alone at a time like that. When I got to my parents' house, Crystal was a mess of tears, completely devastated. And honestly, I felt really bad for her. Nobody deserves to have that done to them, especially 2 months after getting married. I spent like 3 hours there that night, listening to her cry and scream about how Logan was a liar and a cheater. And my mom was there saying things like, "Don't worry, Mija. You're young. You'll find someone better." And all those kinds of things you say when someone is going through a horrible breakup. Crystal started divorce proceedings almost immediately, which was the right thing to do, but the whole process was an emotional chaos for the whole family for months. Here's where things get really ugly. In November, like 4 months after Crystal separated and 2 months before my wedding, my mom calls me on a Sunday afternoon. I was at home with Gabriel doing, I don't know, I think we were watching a movie or something. And when I saw it was my mom, I answered normally thinking maybe she wanted to talk about some detail of the wedding, but no. What came out of her mouth was something I literally never expected to hear. She tells me, "Victoria, we need to talk about your wedding." And I'm like, "Okay, what's up?" And she drops, "I think you should consider canceling it or at least postponing it, because Crystal is still very sensitive about her whole divorce thing, and it's going to be very difficult for her to see you get married when her own marriage failed." I was silent for like 10 seconds because my brain wasn't processing what I'd just heard. Was she asking me to cancel my wedding because my sister was going through a divorce? I finally tell her, "Mom, are you being serious right now?" And she starts with the typical speech of, "It's just that Crystal is going through a very difficult time and you have to be understanding. You're the older sister. You should think about her feelings. Maybe you could do something smaller, more intimate, without all the big celebration." I literally couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her no, that I definitely wasn't going to cancel or change my wedding because Crystal couldn't keep her 2-month marriage together, and she got really mad at me, saying I was being selfish and that I didn't care about my sister. Gabriel heard the whole conversation because he was sitting next to me, and when I hung up, he looked at me with those eyes like, "What the hell just happened?" I told him everything, and he was just as shocked as me. He told me we didn't have to change absolutely anything, that this was our wedding and that my mom was completely out of line to even suggest it. But the thing didn't end there. Not at all. For the next 2 weeks, my mom called me every 2 days with the same topic, telling me to reconsider, to think about Crystal, that the family was going to be uncomfortable, that I was rubbing my happiness in my sister's face, and every time I told her no, and every time the conversation ended with her being mad at me, then Stephanie calls me again and tells me I need to know something. Apparently, Crystal had been telling several family members that I was making my wedding super extravagant on purpose to make her feel bad, that I was showing off everything on social media specifically to hurt her, that I'd never loved her, and that this was my way of rubbing in, that I had a successful marriage and she didn't. None of those things were true. I'd barely posted like 3 photos about the wedding on Instagram, super normal things like the dress I chose for the bridesmaids or the cake we picked, nothing extravagant or ostentatious. And I definitely wasn't thinking about Crystal when I posted those things. I was literally sharing my happiness like any normal bride would. My Aunt Michelle, who is my biological dad's sister and has always been like a second mom to me, told me not to pay them any mind, to continue with my plans, that this was my life and my moment. But the pressure from my mom and the things Crystal was saying about me were affecting me a lot. I started to feel guilty, which is ridiculous because I didn't do anything wrong. But when your own mother makes you feel like you're a terrible person for being happy, you eventually start questioning yourself, you know? December came and we had Christmas dinner at my parents' house, like we do every year. I didn't want to go, honestly, but Gabriel convinced me, saying that maybe we could work things out if we talked in person. Big mistake. We got to the house and everything seemed normal at first. Patrick received us well. Some cousins were there. The food was ready. Typical Christmas dinner. The Crystal arrived like half an hour after us, and from the moment she came through the door, I could see she was coming with attitude. She didn't greet me directly, just said a general hello to everyone and went straight to sit on the couch with her phone. During dinner, things were tense but manageable until my mom, "I don't know why the hell she thought it was a good idea," asks Gabriel in front of everyone about the wedding plans. Gabriel, being the saint that he is, started talking very casually about the venue and the date, and Crystal literally drops her fork, making a loud noise on the plate, and says, "Are we seriously going to talk about that here?" We all went silent. My mom tries to calm the situation, saying something like, "Crystal, honey, it's okay." and Crystal explodes. She starts yelling at me that I'm a selfish bitch, that I've always been the favorite, that I never cared about her, that I'm enjoying watching her suffer, that my wedding is a slap in her face. I sat there trying not to cry because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break, but inside I was furious. Patrick tried to intervene, telling Crystal to calm down, that she was being irrational, but she wouldn't stop. She kept going and going, saying I was horrible, that Gabriel was probably going to cheat on me too because that was my karma for being such a bad sister. At that point, Gabriel got up from the table and told me, "We're leaving." And I agreed. But before leaving, something in me broke, and I told Crystal everything I'd been holding in for months. I told her that I wasn't to blame for her marriage failing, that her impulsive decisions weren't my responsibility, that I'd been planning this wedding since before she even met Logan, and that I was tired of her and my mom trying to make me feel guilty for being happy. My mom, instead of defending me, tells me I'm going too far, that I shouldn't talk to my sister like that when she's vulnerable. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I told my mom I was tired of her always putting Crystal's feelings above mine, that for my whole life she'd done that and that I wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. Gabriel and I left that house and drove to our apartment in complete silence, because I was crying too much to talk. It was probably one of the worst nights of my life. The next day, after talking with Gabriel, Lindsay, and my Aunt Michelle, I decided to do something I never thought I would do. I sent a long email to my mom and Crystal, telling them that, after much consideration, I had decided they weren't invited to my wedding. I explained that their behavior over the last few months had been toxic and manipulative, that I deserved to have a special day without drama, and that I needed to protect my mental peace and my happiness. I told my mom that it hurt me a lot to have to make this decision, but that she had chosen to take Crystal's side instead of being happy for me, and that had consequences. Crystal didn't even respond to the email. But my mom called me like 20 times that day, leaving me voicemails saying I was overreacting, that I was hurting her, that I was going to regret this. I didn't answer any calls. Several family members contacted me after that. Some, like my Aunt Michelle and Stephanie, supported me completely and said I'd done the right thing. Others, especially some aunts from my mom's side, told me I was being too harsh, that family is family and that I should forgive. Patrick called me and told me he understood my decision even though it hurt him not to be there on my wedding day. And that broke my heart because he'd always been good to me, but I explained that I couldn't risk having my mom and Crystal there causing problems. January came faster than I expected. The week before the wedding, Lindsay lets me know that Crystal had been posting things on social media with super obvious indirect comments about fake sisters and selfish people. I decided to block her on all platforms because I didn't need that negative energy before the most important day of my life. But then, 2 days before the wedding, Gabriel received some text messages from an unknown number. They were from Crystal. The messages were completely inappropriate, basically trying to flirt with him, telling him things like she'd always thought he was very handsome, that if things didn't work out with me, she'd be there for him. Absolutely disgusting and desperate things. Gabriel showed me the messages immediately, and we saved screenshots of everything in case we needed them later. The wedding day finally arrived. I was nervous but excited, surrounded by Lindsay and my other bridesmaids in the bridal room getting ready. The venue looked beautiful, everything was going perfectly, and for the first time in months I felt genuinely happy without that cloud of family stress over my head. But then, like 30 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to start, the event coordinator comes and tells me there's a situation. My heart sank because I immediately knew something related to my mom and Crystal had happened. Turns out both of them showed up at the venue without an invitation, demanding to get in. They'd told the security staff they were the bride's mother and sister and that they obviously should be on the list, that it had been a mistake not to include them. The coordinator was already prepared, because I'd warned him about the possibility of this happening and had hired extra security specifically to handle this situation. I asked them to remove them from the place as discreetly as possible without causing a scene that would ruin the day. According to what they told me later, my mom was crying, saying she was her daughter and had a right to be there, and Crystal was yelling that I was a bitch, basically the same things as always. Security escorted them off the property and told them if they came back, they'd call the police. Honestly, when I found out about that, I felt terrible but also relieved that they hadn't managed to get in and ruin the ceremony. Lindsay hugged me and told me to breathe, not to let that ruin my day, and she was right. I decided I wasn't going to allow Crystal or my mom to steal this moment from me. The ceremony was absolutely perfect. My Aunt Michelle was there. Stephanie was there. Many of my friends, Gabriel's family, and all the people who really loved and supported me. When I walked down the aisle and saw Gabriel waiting for me at the end with that huge smile, all the tears that came out were of pure happiness, not sadness or anger. The vows were beautiful, the party was incredible. We danced until our feet hurt, and it was exactly everything I'd always dreamed it would be. The crazy part comes after the wedding. Stephanie told me that the day after our ceremony, my mom and Crystal had a huge fight at the house. Apparently, my mom finally confronted Crystal about the messages she'd sent to Gabriel, because Patrick had shown them to her after Gabriel sent them to him as proof of how toxic the situation had become. Crystal denied everything at first, but eventually admitted that yes, she had written to Gabriel. And when they asked her why, supposedly she said something like she just wanted to see if he was as perfect as I said, or something equally ridiculous and manipulative. My mom, who for months had been defending every horrible thing Crystal did, apparently realized at that moment how far things had gone. Patrick told my mom she had to set a limit, that Crystal needed professional help and that the behavior of both of them toward me had been completely unacceptable. They ended up fighting so much that my mom told Crystal to leave the house. Crystal is living with a friend now, I think. I'm not completely sure, because we haven't talked at all. My mom has sent me some messages saying she regrets how she handled everything, that she got carried away with wanting to protect Crystal and didn't realize how much she was hurting me in the process, but so far I haven't responded. Not because I don't want to eventually have a relationship with her, but because I need time to process everything and decide if I'm really ready to forgive or if I need more space. Gabriel and I just got back from our honeymoon in Italy last week, and it was amazing to be completely disconnected from all the family drama, just the two of us enjoying our new marriage. Now that we're back home, I guess I have to deal with the situation with my mom and Crystal. But for now, I'm focusing on my life, on my husband, on building our future together. Lindsay told me yesterday she was proud of me for setting boundaries, for defending my happiness, and I think she's right. For a long time, I let my mom and Crystal make me feel guilty for things that weren't my responsibility, and I finally learned that it's okay to prioritize my own mental peace, even if that means distancing myself from family that hurts you. I don't know what's going to happen next with my relationship with them, honestly. Part of me misses my mom, misses having that mother-daughter relationship I always wanted, but never really had, because she was always mediating Crystal's dramatics. But another part of me is so tired of the cycle of manipulation and guilt that I don't know if I want to expose myself to that again. Gabriel says that whatever decision I make, he's going to support me, and that's more than my own family offered. During all this time, my Aunt Michelle also told me I don't have to rush to decide anything, that it's okay to take the time I need to heal and figure out what I want to do. What I do know is that my wedding was perfect, despite all the drama. And when I look at the photos, I don't see what was missing. I see all the beautiful things that were there. I see Gabriel waiting for me. I see my friends dancing. I see the people who really love me celebrating with me. And that's enough. Crystal can keep being miserable and trying to blame others for her own terrible decisions, and my mom can keep trying to be the hero of Crystal's story, but I'm no longer going to be part of that circus. I set my boundaries. I stood up for myself, and although it was one of the hardest things I've had to do, it was completely worth it. For the first time in a long time, I feel free from all that toxicity, and I'm not going to let anyone make me feel bad for choosing my own happiness over family drama. So, yeah, that's my story. And although it was an absolute mess getting here, I'm in a much better place now than I've been in years.